So this next selection bears a little bit of explanation. So I'm going to talk a little longer than I prefer to in these concerts, but I hope that you'll understand why once I explain a little bit about the piece that you're about to hear. But before I talk about that selection, I just want to revisit Anthony Dvorak one more time to talk about what a special reputation he had as a national composer. It was so great and so international that he was actually invited to the United States in 1892, the year after he wrote the Carnegie Overture, to serve as the director of the National Conservatory of Music in New York City. But a major part of the reason that he was brought to America was to help stimulate interest in creating an American nationalistic sound. At that point, most American composers were trying really hard to sound like European composers. And there was a movement effort to try to create an identifiable American sound. And Dvorak was only too happy to help. So while he was in the U.S., he penned a number of essays really espousing the idea that Americans needed to look no further than their own natural musical resources. And by that, Dvorak meant African-American spirituals, American Indian music, and even the kind of songs that were being written by people like Stephen Foster that were already synthesizing these elements of American society into a very individual art form. So Dvorak, of course, followed his own advice to his New World Symphony and his American String Quartet, both of which were wildly successful, and used those American vernacular musical building blocks very successfully. But it took a while for the American composers to really buy what Dvorak was selling. And in fact, one of the first composers to do so really successfully and definitely individually was Charles Edward Ives, the composer of the work that you are about to hear. Now, Ives was just a teenager when Dvorak came to America in 1892. He was just finishing up high school and had spent his boyhood in Danbury, Connecticut, learning music at the elbow of his father, George Edward Ives, who was the local band director and church choir director as well. So Ives was immersed in American vernacular music. And by vernacular music, I mean church hymns, popular songs, marches, the kinds of things that you would hear the village band play, or he would hear in the church on Sunday mornings. And in addition to inheriting that love of that type of music from his father, he also inherited a penchant for experimentation, because George Ives loved to experiment with music in all sorts of unusual ways. One time he actually set up two opposing bands at the opposite ends of Main Street in Danbury, Connecticut, had them playing two different marches and marched toward each other, because he just wanted to hear what it sounded like when they passed by each other and those two different selections mingled together. So it was that kind of musical curiosity that Charles Ives also inherited from his father, and that you hear very much in his music. So when Ives set out as a young composer, trying to create his own original type of music, he found these tunes that he grew up with were kind of banging around inside his head, and he couldn't get away from them. They kept kind of sneaking into his compositions. And rather than fighting this, Ives really embraced it and created a very unique style of music, using those very same kind of musical building blocks that Dvorak was talking about, but in an entirely unpredictable way. So what you're going to hear now in Decoration Day is it's almost like peeking into Charles Ives' musical subconscious. It's like we get a sneak peek inside his brain, because you're going to hear all of these little fragments of tunes, some of which you'll recognize, some of which you may just think, gosh, why does that sound familiar? And he would use just these little nuggets and put them side by side, often overlapping in different keys, kind of like when his dad had the two bands marching toward each other at the same time. But it really creates this incredible kind of tapestry of American music that is unique to Charles Ives. Now, I realize I've talked a long time already, but there's one other thing I want to share with you, because this work, Decoration Day, is programmatic. Charles Ives is telling a story. And the story that he's telling is a childhood memory from his own boyhood days in Danbury, Connecticut, when they observed Decoration Day, which is the holiday that is now known as Memorial Day. But back then it was called Decoration Day, and it was specifically to honor the fallen soldiers of the Civil War. So the scene kind of goes like this. It opens at daybreak with the sun rising over the mountains over a misty valley, and the town folk are already gathering flowers to decorate the graves of the fallen soldiers. And to describe this scene, Ives created music that he called the flower song, and I'll talk about that again in a moment. But After we hear that for a few moments, we hear the parade actually starting to gather. And you can tell because you'll hear the sound of the parade marshals on their big workhorses. You'll hear the sound of the hose cart from the fire department with the jangling bells. You'll actually hear the town band warming up and blowing a few notes. And this is all happening as this parade is gathering. You'll know when the parade steps off because you're going to hear very solemn funereal dirge music. But it's not a tune that you would expect really would ordinarily associate with this kind of event. It's Adeste Fidelis. And the reason for this was oftentimes in town bands, they didn't have a big collection of music, and so if they had to play something for a funeral, they would take something that they all knew and played it in a minor key. So you're going to hear Adeste Fidelis played in a minor key as they're processing to the cemetery. Once they're at the cemetery, they decorate the graves with flowers, and you'll hear the sounding of taps, which of course is meant to honor those fallen soldiers. And then it's time to march back to town. But the march back to town is very different than the march to the cemetery. And in many ways, it kind of reminds me of a New Orleans-style funeral procession, if you've ever seen one of those. So in one of those processions, it's very slow and somber on the way to the cemetery. But on the way back, it's really a celebration of life. It is upbeat, it is joyous, it's really a party. And that is exactly what you're going to hear as these townfolk in Danbury, Connecticut return to town. But the music they use to march back to is what Ives called a Yankee stimulant, and it's none other than the march you heard at the beginning of this program, D.W. Reeves' 2nd Regiment Connecticut March. So the march ends rather abruptly, and you might think the piece is over, but if you listen carefully, you'll hear that a few instruments are still playing, and then we'll hear an echo of that flower music that was at the very beginning of the day. And Ives uses this to represent the sun setting over West Mountain, and as he put it, breathing its benediction upon the day. We hope that you enjoy Charles Ives' Decoration Day. not stage? Oh, here we go. Everybody, there you go. So we are going to continue our program with the music of John Williams, who of course is so well known for his incredible film scores. But Mr. Williams has also got a number of concerti that he has written over the years that have earned a lot of attention as well. Oftentimes these concerti are written for acquaintances or friends of his, and that is certainly the case with the tuba concerto, which was written for Chester Schmitz, longtime principal tuba with the Boston Pops Orchestra, a group that Mr. Williams conducted, of course, for many years. Mr. Williams makes no secret of the fact that he absolutely loves writing for the tuba. He talked about writing first for the tuba in a Dick Van Dyke movie called Fitzwilly from the 1960s. And of course, you hear it so often featured prominently in his film scores. But this is the first time that he's ever actually written a full-blown, pardon the expression, concerto for the tuba. And we're so excited to be presenting it here for you tonight. The something old, something new angle is that Mr. Williams, his style of writing for writing concertos is a little different than his film scores. It's a little more serious, but you'll still find some humorous references to some of his film scores in this music, so I encourage you to listen very carefully. To perform this work tonight, we're going to welcome to the stage Anthony Niffen, who most of you probably know in his role as the principal tubist with the Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra, a position that he has held for many, many years. He is also really one of the leading authorities on the John Williams tuba concerto. He's been playing it for several decades now, and his interpretations are considered to be among the very best of this piece of music. We're especially thrilled to feature Tony Niffen tonight, not just because of his role in the ISO, but because he is the newest member of our applied faculty here at Butler University. This is his first year as our dedicated professor of tuba, and it's been so fun to work with him, to see that same passion that he brings to his performance, he also brings to his teaching, and the impact that he has had on not just our tuba players, but our low brass players as well, has been really, really exciting to watch. So I'd like you to please join me in welcoming to the stage to play John Williams' tuba concerto, Tony Niffen. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We continue our program with the music of the British composer Ralph Vaughan Williams, who is, of course, best known for his orchestral masterpieces, but was also a key figure in the development of original repertoire for the concert band in the 20th century. Vaughan Williams was conscripted into service in World War I, and part of that service was as a military musician. And he discovered firsthand how little good quality music there was for the concert band. Most bands of that time were still playing orchestral or operatic transcriptions, and most music written originally for band was in the form of marches or waltzes, dances, very light in nature. And so when Vaughan Williams was discharged from the Army, he decided to do something about this himself by writing works like Toccata Marziale, which he created in 1924. As you might guess from the title, there is a reference to earlier musical forms hearkening from the Renaissance and Baroque eras in that title, Toccata. Vaughan Williams had a real affinity for polyphony. He had studied the works of the Baroque masters of polyphony like Johann Sebastian Bach as a young man, as an organ student. And polyphony often finds a place in the music of Vaughan Williams, but it's all over this piece that you're about to hear. It is polyphonic from beginning to end. It really is a masterpiece in our repertoire, and I'm so happy that to conduct it, we're going to welcome to the stage our Director of Athletic Bands here at Butler University, Dr. Matthew J. Smith. Matt is finishing his third year here at Butler. In addition to leading our athletic bands, he is the co-director of our Butler University Symphonic Band. Before coming to Butler, Matt served as the Director of Bands at University of Tennessee, Chattanooga. Will you please welcome to the stage to conduct Toccata Marziale, Matt Smith. So we've got a, try this again. We've got a little bit of a set change here, so I'm going to do a little bit of talking while that's happening. The next work that we're going to play for you is from the Russian composer Dmitri Shostakovich. Many people know of Shostakovich because of his incredibly intense, emotional, and very dramatic orchestral music. Of course, he wrote for a variety of mediums as well. But in addition to this very serious side of Shostakovich's personality, there's also a wickedly humorous one. Shostakovich really had a wonderful sense of humor, very, very witty. And there are a series of works that he wrote that really kind of revealed this side of his personality. In fact, one piece that he wrote that was entitled Tahiti Trot came about as the result of a bet that he had with the Russian conductor Nikolai Malko, who wagered that he couldn't create an orchestral arrangement of Tea for Two for orchestra in less than an hour. Well, 40 minutes later, Shostakovich won the bet with 20 minutes to spare. It was also Malko that brought to Shostakovich's attention some wonderful keyboard gems from Domenico Scarlatti. Scarlatti was a composer who was active in the late Baroque, early classical era and really specialized in keyboard sonatas, wrote several hundred sonatas as a matter of fact. So Shostakovich looked through these sonatas and he found a couple of movements that he thought would work really well for a chamber wind ensemble. As you can see, it's a very small group of winds here on the stage. And they are two very different movements. The first one is slow and a little bit more somber, although there's even a little humor in that. But the second one is really just a romp. He clearly had fun reimagining this music of Scarlatti in this very modern context through what he did with instrumentation and especially what he did with harmonization. So we hope that you enjoy Shostakovich's two Scarlatti pieces. So I planned to begin my last set of remarks in a certain way that requires that everyone be on stage. And it didn't dawn on me until just now that that was a really bad plan because they're still coming out here. But we've got most everybody back here now. And the reason I was going to start by talking about the folks when they're back on the stage is that for many of the musicians on the stage here tonight, this is their final appearance with the Butler University Wind Ensemble because they will be graduating in just a few weeks. So I'm going to ask them to please stand. If you'll stand now and remain standing. If you're graduating, do we have anybody graduating? Good, there we go. And remain standing. So I was going to ask you to withhold your applause because I wanted to say some really gushing, embarrassing things, but I'm glad you clapped anyway, but I want you guys to remain standing because I'm still going to say those things. Before I do that, I want to point out that I made a mistake in the program and left off Nolan Cardenas, who was kind enough to join us on alto clarinet tonight, so thank you so much, Nolan, and congratulations to you too. I just wanted to take a moment to talk about just how impressive these folks who are standing, and even those who are sitting, you're just not graduating yet, but everyone on this stage is impressive for a number of different ways. But one of the things that occurs to me from time to time is that this is not a conservatory of music. People don't come here, our music majors don't come here to study only music. They're here for a liberal arts education, and there are so many demands on their time. We have many, many different majors represented on the stage, several within the School of Music and JCA, but some across the campus. And the fact that these students have so many demands on their time, and yet they are so dedicated to making music here at Butler University, and specifically here with the Wind Ensemble, that I am so very, very grateful. I know how busy they are. I know how hard they're working, but I also know how seriously they take their responsibilities with the Wind Ensemble. And guys, I just want to say thank you so much, especially to you graduating seniors, but everyone on the stage. Believe me, it is not unnoticed. I know how hard you're working, and I greatly appreciate it. And I do want to add the thought that for those of you who are graduating, you guys are going to be doing amazing things, okay? Not just because of what you've learned here at Butler, but because of what you have demonstrated during your time here. You are all such great students, conscientious musicians, and so incredibly talented. You're going to set the world on fire, all right? So when you do, don't forget about us back here at Butler, okay? Come on back and say hi, and let us know all the great things that you're accomplishing in your careers beyond Butler. So again, congratulations to all of you. Let's hear it one more time for our seniors and graduate students. Now you can sit. Just a few words about our last selection on the program. So at the beginning of the second half, I talked about how Vaughan Williams' awareness of the lack of good original band music stemmed from his service during World War I. And I can say exactly the same thing about Paul Hindemith, who was also conscripted for service in Germany during World War I. Served as a military musician, primarily as a violin and viola player in a string quartet, but occasionally he got recruited to play bass drum with a regiment band. And that's when he realized, even in Germany, there really wasn't much good original band music. So when he was discharged from the Army, not only he, but many of his friends started writing very actively for the concert band. Now we have to fast forward several decades, actually, for the work that you're about to hear, his symphony for band, symphony in B-flat for band, which came about because of an invitation that he had received to guest conduct the U.S. Army Band, Pershing's own, in Washington, D.C. Now, the invitation only asked him to come and conduct. He took it upon himself to write what he called a little something for the event. And this little something is really an incredible work, a monument, if you will, in the band's repertoire, because it is a full-blown symphony, which is a rarity in band music. Hindemith, you know, when it comes to, you know, this idea of everything old is new again, Hindemith does this on so many different levels. He brings a kind of a Baroque sense of polyphony, a classical sense of form, a romantic sense of drama, and a 20th century view of harmony. And he manages to wrap this all together in this just incredibly individual and compelling package. We really hope that you enjoy his Symphony B-flat. And again, thank you so much for coming out to listen to the Butler University Wind Ensemble. Thank you.